patreon.com/Facebook to join the Facebook group, and it's completely free. Also, the second thing I wanted to remind you of was the ebook, which I've just released. So the ebook is titled The Comprehensive Guide to Trading Mentorship. And in summary, that ebook explains everything you need to know about how to get a trading mentor. And I just want to be very clear. When I say a trading mentor, I'm not talking about how to choose the right service or educator or coach or anything like that. I'm talking about genuine mentoring because I think it's so important for a trader's development. So make sure you check that out. That's at, chatwithtraders.com/mentor, mentor. And yeah, if you follow the link, you can grab a free copy of that ebook. It'll probably take you about 10 to 15 minutes to read. It's quite compact, but it's also very thorough. And I think you'll get a lot out of it, especially if you are looking for a mentor yourself. So anyway, guys, check it out and make sure to tell me what you think of it. I'd love your feedback. And I hope to see you in the Facebook group. So that's all from me for now. Over and out. I'm Aaron Fifield.
You've reached the end of this episode of Chat with Traders. But rest assured, there are more episodes loaded with real market insight and zero hype on the way soon. So to stay updated with each great new release, subscribe to the podcast in iTunes. And we'd love it if you'd leave a rating and review. We'll catch you next time on Chat with Traders.
What would your trading look like if capital wasn't the longer sure path forward?
How you doing? That's because his father was an options market maker. Plus, his brothers and sister are working major roles in the industry too. Today, Charlie is a partner and the CEO of two operations, Sanlucci and Flammarion. Sanlucci being the trader education side and Flammarion being a hedge fund, which mostly consists of automated traders. We had a really interesting conversation speaking about Charlie's observations from working with and evaluating traders, why humility is key, and what it means to own your strategy. Also, Charlie shares great insight on the subjects of psychology, biohacking, and innovative technology and how it can benefit traders. Now, just to echo a couple things I mentioned last week. So I've recently opened a Facebook group for Chat with Traders. It's completely free to join, and it's somewhere that you can connect with other traders and listeners of this podcast. So go to chatwithtraders.com/Facebook. That'll redirect you straight to the actual group on Facebook. Just hit the join button and I'll, of course, let you in. And the other thing is the free guide, which I've just released. It's titled The Comprehensive Guide to Trading Mentorship. And it explains pretty much all you need to know about how to connect with a mentor. So to get a copy, just go to chatwithtraders.com/mentor. I think it'll probably take you around about 10 to 15 minutes to read from cover to cover. And again, if you want to grab a copy, chatwithtraders.com/mentor. All right, here is my interview with Charlie Bathgate, this week's guest from NYC. Charlie Bathgate, what's up, man? How you doing?
Aaron, what's up, man? Thanks for having me.
No trouble whatsoever. It's good to have you on, and thanks a lot for doing this. So I guess we should point out right at the beginning, just to save any confusion for the guys listening, you yourself are not a trader, but you're in an interesting position where you're surrounded by traders each and every day, and you know the industry very well. And you're also very big on the psychology and technology areas of trading, which we're going to get into in just a bit. But for now, though, let's hear about your background and how you got to where you are now. So when did you become aware of financial markets, and what actually got you interested in the field?
That's a great question. So I became aware of the financial markets pretty much, I think, when I had, an awareness of, I guess, consciousness of the world. My dad was a trader growing up, and he was a market maker, options market maker, and a trader. And looking at he's a pretty emotional guy, and he had emotional swings. Actually, some pretty considerable mental health issues that at certain times came about because of the swings in the markets. And so, I think through indirectly through him and my experience with him and his life, that's when I drew a cause and effect and said, hey, there's this thing called the markets that is really, affecting my dad, but that he was also, obsessed with, and that he definitely passed that passion on to me. So I started going to work with him. He had a small broker dealer based out of Denver, Colorado, and I started going to work with him when I was really young. Two older brothers, we all did the same thing. So I was pretty much surrounded by traders, and also, his company, they raised money for small companies as well. They did some IPOs and whatnot. So entrepreneurs and traders, I was just surrounded by them from a very young age. So by the time I got to college, I really felt like I had spent, I had literally spent, 10, 15 years just completely absorbed in the markets. So
that's very cool. That's very cool. And you mentioned that your two brothers also, used to go to work with your dad as well. Are they involved in the industry in any way?
Yeah, they are. As is my little sister. My oldest brother does third-party marketing for hedge funds, so very large institutional funds. 500 million to a couple billion. He helps raise the money. And my other brother is an analyst at a large mutual fund. He's the math major of the family. So he's got a CFA. Very smart dude. Makes me feel like shit about myself every once in a while, but that's what older brothers are there for. So.
Right. Okay. So, what did you study at college? Walk us through sort of life before, I guess, from college through to where you got now. Like, fill us in on that gap.
Yeah. So I went to Duke. I graduated with degrees in English, and they don't have a business degree. It's a certificate, but pretty much a double major in English and business. And this was crash. So I graduated in 2009. So 2000, it was fall of 2008. I'll never forget my friend going up to do interviews up in New York for a job after graduation, and he was up there the day Lehman failed, and we were all kind of in our bubble, in college, and pretty much only concerned with ourselves and not what was going on with the rest of the world. And he came back and said, guys, the world is falling apart up there. I just saw grown men, crying with boxes of stuff in their arms on the street. We were like, whoa. And so, I think, and also looking at a lot of my friends who had gone up into investment banking, that was really, if you were going into finance coming out of Duke, it was almost all investment banking. Very, very few guys went into trading. And I just saw that they were working insane hours. They were making really good money, but I just didn't think I could even do it. I was like, I don't think I could work 100-hour weeks for something that I don't even really care that much about. So, I ended up saying, all right, I'm going to take a completely different path. I had always had an interest in film and in writing and production and just sort of the film industry. So I said, I'm going to, kind of do the exact opposite. I went out to Los Angeles. I started working in writing and production and film. I got a chance to work for one of the biggest directors out there, a guy named Gore Verbinski. He did like Pirates of the Caribbean and The Ring and stuff, and got a lot of cool experience there. And then I paired up with a film producer, this woman who became my mentor, who kind of a second mother to me, and she was starting a film fund. She was raising $50 million to pretty much finance a slate of movies that she would produce. And because I had a pretty general background in finance and exposure to entrepreneurship, we had a nice dynamic where she taught me everything about the film industry and about how to run a team, run a company, run a production, and in return, I helped her a lot with, raising money and getting pitch decks together and stuff like that for investors. So that was a great experience, and that took me through to about late 2011, and I just kind of decided the film industry is insane. I can't imagine doing this for the rest of my life. Hollywood is nuts. And so I was kind of looking for the next thing to do. I actually was considering, I really thought I was going to go try to get a PhD in psychology. But then I met Peter Zhang, who you've had him on before, I think. And met Peter and we started talking, and he said he knew this great trader, this guy, Sang Lucci on Twitter, and he was going to be working with him. And I said, all right, this guy is clearly very smart. I'm going to hang out with him and maybe work with him a little bit until just until I get a signal that, I shouldn't be doing this. And 4 months later, we moved out to New York. Anand, who is, the man behind Sangluchi, Anand Sangvi, Peter and I lived in this loft that we were also working out of, and that was kind of the beginning of it. So, yeah.
Awesome. Really cool story, Charlie. Peter Zhang was on episode 9 of the podcast, so guys, definitely check that out. That was an awesome interview. And Lucci has also been on. He was episode 8. I'll link to those in the show notes anyway. So, Charlie, give us the rundown on what you do today. Like, give us a brief summary of your day-to-day. What's your task, what's your role that you're involved with the guys today?
Yeah, so pretty much our operations have expanded into, we pretty much have 2 operations. We have, I would describe them as 2 incubators. One of them is a hedge fund where we incubate traders to, trade within the hedge fund. Almost all automated traders, so definitely gravitating more towards that. And then the second component is an incubator for mostly software, online products that would be targeting traders. So education, software, anything within that realm. Sangluchi.com is where we started, and that was really sort of our bread and butter. That really helped pay the overhead and everything when we were in New York in the beginning. And then we've expanded out. We partnered up with Wall Street Jesus, which was really cool, working on his flow scanner and building out the chat interface that we run with him, and then also partnering up with HFT Alert, Steve Hammer over there, who I'm hoping to get on your podcast too. I think he'd be a great interview for you. My role is to be the sane one, to be the non-trader in the group. I'm pretty much tasked with management, operations, the marketing of things. I would say at this point, Peter and I sort of run things as kind of co-presidents on everything, and it kind of depends on the day. Some days, like today, we were very much focused on the hedge fund. We have meetings in Chicago in the next couple of days. We had to do a lot of prep for that. And other days, it's we're really focused on stuff going on with the websites. You kind of got to put on different hats at different moments depending on what's going on.
Sure. Okay. Now, you said something interesting in your response there about how the majority of the traders that you bring on are focused on automation. Why is that the case? Like, why do you prefer to bring on traders who lean more towards automation?
That's a great question. I could talk for days on it, I guess. I think these days it is, as I'm sure your listeners know, it's just so much. There's so much less edge out there. It is so much harder to make money. It's so much more competitive, especially in U.S. equities markets. So when you have a degree of sophistication in the automation realm, it's a differentiation that you can. It's kind of a moat around your business, around your trade. It's something that if you have that technological expertise and you have a system that you've built up that is robust, that has the rules of your trade that make it successful, built into it, I think it just increases your odds of success that much more. It's trading alone, in easier markets is hard enough from a psychological standpoint. If you're just a human doing it discretionary, doing the discipline that's required is really considerable. So I think for us, as we're putting investor money behind what these guys are doing, the predictability, the amount of testing you can do, the degree of confidence you can have in the executions, and that certain rules will be followed, makes us sleep better at night. We've had better success with it, to be honest. We've worked with discretionary traders, we've worked with non-discretionary traders, and just in our limited experience, it's the automated guys that have succeeded and done well. So yeah.
Okay. Now you said you're flying out to Chicago in a couple of days, for meetings, and I from what I understand, that happens pretty regularly. What are the meetings that you kind of attend in relation to the hedge fund? Like, what are they about?
It depends. Sometimes we're meeting with guys who could be potential traders. Sometimes we are meeting with potential sources of capital, which could be, high net worth individual investors, could be, well-established prop firms that are out there that, would back a trade like ours. And then, there's always the technology that support, vendors that support any of the trades. There's often a lot of relationship management, business development stuff that we have to do related to that. So, and then, we have a mentor who's, kind of on our board of advisors and has been, hugely instrumental in kind of guiding us through things. So he's based out there too. So, we soak up as much knowledge as we can when we go there. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Very cool. Now, Charlie, I've got a question for you. Being surrounded by traders, have you ever been tempted to trade yourself? Like, what's your decision for being involved in the business, but not as an actual trader?
I think about that every day. I mean, the thing with trading is that I really think it kind of consumes at least a piece of yourself. You can almost tell traders when you meet them whether someone's a trader or not based on like the amount of energy they exude, the amount of focus that they have that they can give to other sort of non-trading facets of their life, because the markets are obviously changing every single day. They are dynamic. They are constantly shifting. The competition has never been more intense. So it really kind of takes a piece of your brain and a piece of your life. And I saw that with my dad growing up. I see that with a lot of my best friends, with my business partners, with the traders that we work with, with the websites, with the guys in the hedge funds. It just kind of consumes you. And I think I just said, all right, here's a list of things that I want to do, and then all of these things I would pretty much, I think, have to give up if I traded, and I don't think of myself as someone who would have like some amazing knack for trading. I think it would take me just as much, if not more work to be good at trading, as what the average person requires. So it's just like, am I willing to, the kind of the cost benefit, I guess, of would I want to just completely give it up, everything else I do to trade, because I think that's the sacrifice that trading really, demands of you. So that's the math that kind of goes into it.
Okay. Now, that's a really interesting response, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. One of the things you've mentioned to me in the past is that you have a great amount of respect for anyone who can trade successfully and support themselves, over time. Why is this the case? Like, why do you share that? Why do you have that great amount of respect for traders?
I think because it's just so difficult, for one, and it requires such persistence. And it is, you and I in the past have talked about, sort of similarities to entrepreneurship too. And I think one of the similarities is that both of those, both trading and entrepreneurship, you can just get, the ground taken out from underneath you at any moment. And you can be kicking ass and, you're trading, you're racking up, profitable day after profitable day and just killing it. And then the next day, market regime shift or, a glitch in your code, something happens and, you just take a colossal loss. It's like, you can never let your guard down. You always have to be on your game. And then I think going, beyond that and speaking to like individual traders who are on their own, who are not working within a firm structure, who don't have, a couple $1 million of technology and infrastructure and, execution, pipes behind them. They're just, in their home office trying to trade. It's like the technology, yes, the technology is stacked against you, but also just the psychological component of not having people that you can, learn from immediately, like right available to you, that you can talk to, very successful traders that can pass on that knowledge to you. It used to be with, trading in the pit, like you started out, you were clerking for somebody that was an apprenticeship, that was the way, that was a knowledge transfer process. And, now that the markets have gone electronic, like it's much harder. That avenue doesn't exist the same way that it used to. So I just think if you're a guy at home and you're trying to trade and trying to figure out the markets, and there's a million different people out there trying to get your attention to buy their product or their education or whatever, you're just inundated with challenges and distractions, and to be able to sift through all that and, maintain a sense of consistency for yourself that's a tremendously impressive thing to me. So
no doubt, no doubt. So from the way you see it, I mean, I think you may have touched on it there, but if we could just, go into a little further, why are the odds of success stacked against traders from the get-go?
You mean like sort of, I guess what you could say, retail, like non-professional traders?
Yeah, let's start there.
Yeah. I just think now the amount of money that is put behind, the amount of money and intelligence that's put behind a lot of the institutional trading and the strategies is just tremendous. It's just, when you compare, a firm that has a couple of PhDs, running all sorts of quantitative analysis on the markets at any given time, and then the knowledge that you have. I mean, I think you've had Chaim on, the order type controversy was a pretty well-known thing a couple of years back. That was something that only, top tier, firms really knew about. There's a lot of stuff that is just sort of like insider knowledge, I guess you could say. It's not insider trading. They're not trading on information that isn't available, but they're aware of technology. They're aware of, they have access to relationships. I mean, even looking at like commissions, the commission structure a lot of times, especially, in in like sort of the CME world and the CFTC and, futures markets. I mean, it can be really cryptic, and getting memberships, for the various exchanges and whatnot. I mean, Peter, my partner, sometimes it's a full-time job for him to just try and navigate through the labyrinth of what's out there, just to try and get us the best commissions that are available. So I think the resources that are put towards extracting edge out of the markets by major participants in the markets right now are so enormous and so considerable. And the intelligence of some of the people that are in these firms is really, really legitimate. I mean, I kind of get tired of hearing about, physics PhDs like getting, absorbed into quant firms and whatnot. But when you meet some of these guys, it really is, it's crazy. They're really, really bright people. So, it's, in some ways, it's just not that complicated. It's just, there's so many resources being put towards extracting that edge, and in some ways predicting what a non-professional trader would do, and then taking advantage of, the pitfalls that they know that person's going to step into. So, you have people who are working around the clock under tremendous pressure with a ton of money and a ton of intelligence. All their only job is to, beat you at trading. That's what you're up against. Not to make everyone think that they should just give it up. I'm not saying that, but you got to know what you're up against.
Well, yeah, no doubt. Yeah. So what are some of the challenges that you find are unique to trading as a job, or as a discipline, if you want to call it that, opposed to jobs in other industries?
Great question. I think, the constantly shifting nature of the markets means that even the best traders, your trade can always go away. A trade that has worked for 10 years, it can go away. It'll stop working. Someone, sees what you're doing and they, close the gap, or whatever, market shift, for some reason it stops working. It means that you have to constantly be able to reinvent yourself. And, if you're an accountant, if you're a lawyer, I don't think that you don't have to reinvent yourself nearly, to that degree, and you can sort of re-educate yourself. I also think the degree to which other people don't understand, like other people in your life probably don't understand how much it takes of you to trade, is probably quite difficult. Like, I think one of the things that I've seen traders have a difficult time with, various people in my life, is their relationship with other people in their life, their girlfriend, their wife, their husband, whatever, and the fact that they just don't get that at the end of the day, when they've traded all day, it's like they've been in a psychological boxing match, and they come out of it and they're sort of like a little bit in the haze. And it's very hard to go from that to then have any kind of brain power or willpower left and go in and live the rest of your life, in a mature way. I think there's one of the reasons why like a lot of traders just love to party and drink and whatever is because they get to the end of the day and their brain just kind of shot, and they're like, hey, let's go get fucked up. They don't have anything else left. They can't do anything else. I know a bunch of my friends who are traders, have said to me for years, like, I'm really going to get back into working out. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do it. And I honestly feel like it's the deck's just stacked against them. It's a question of willpower. Like they've been making decisions all day, like thousands of decisions sometimes. And then they expect their brain to be able to say, okay, now we're going to go, do this thing that I don't really want to do, go work out. And unfortunately, it's just not realistic. So I think the amount that how much it takes out of you as a job, I think is something that's unique to trading too. I think honestly, the markets in the industry really, really have changed a ton over the last, obviously the last 30 years, but even the last, 5 years. I can't think of another industry. I don't have the expertise really to comment on it, but there have been so many changes in terms of how the market, like just getting access to the markets, and how markets move and the various participants that are there. And, it's really changed a lot. So I guess speaking to kind of the first point I made, you just really have to be on your toes all the time. You can't ever relax and coast. You don't get to do that.
Yeah. That's a really valid point there, Charlie.
Ever watch a stock rip and think, I could have nailed that if I had real capital? The truth is, many capable traders never reach their potential, not due to lack of skill, but lack of scale. Trade the Pool was built to solve exactly that. A firm designed for serious individuals who want access to the U.S. equity markets with meaningful buying power, up to $200,000 without committing their own capital. Get access to virtually every stock and ETF. Go long or short freely with the flexibility professional traders expect. You're evaluated on one thing: your ability to manage risk and execute with consistency. Meet the standard, and you trade at scale. No subscriptions, no ongoing commitments. Whether you're still refining your strategy, a trader with experience who hasn't yet broken through, or a seasoned professional simply looking for more capital, Trade the Pool is built to meet you where you are and take you that next step further. The markets have evolved, access has evolved, now so has the way traders operate within them. Trade the Pool.
And just sort of continuing on that, what are some of the common denominators between those, from what you've seen, what are some of the common denominators between those who have achieved consistency and do make a comfortable living from trading?
Great question. I think there's a couple things. One of them is that they know, sort of like the don't die rule, they know how to keep their seat at the table. They don't blow themselves up. So they don't put terminal risk on the table. They know that trading in a lot of ways is about surviving long enough and getting through market cycles that are not that great for your strategy, so that you're around when, that 10% of the time chance, comes around and you have the opportunity to make a ton of money. They know that, there's some traders that they make the vast majority of their income of the year, in one or two trades, and they know that they have to keep their seat at the table and survive through that. I think just, sincere passion and sort of fascination with the markets is one thing too. I think a lot of people try to get themselves interested in it because they see that, the amount of money that could be made. But a lot of the guys that really are successful are able to, they really care. They really are just fascinated by how the markets move. They'd be doing it whether they made money or not doing it. Well, maybe that's not true, but, they'd be really interested in it. And working their ass off, just crazy dedication and willingness to make sacrifices, putting in the hours. I mean, I remember Lucci telling me when he first told me how he learned tape reading. I mean, he was at a prop firm and he was losing money when he first started, and he would go through. He took the best trades from the best trader there. He took, sort of the trade log, and he would go back through and he would look at the tape. He would match up the trades with the tape, and he would discern cause and effect between what did this guy see in the tape, why, what did he do, and he would do that for like 3-4 hours every day after the market closed, and that's how we learned how to read tape. And 95% of the people who try to learn trading, they don't want to do that. So yeah, you have to have really serious dedication. I think also just intelligence. You don't have to be a genius to be a good trader, but you definitely can't be like a complete dumbass. Like you can't. You have to have something working for you. And actually, I would think. I think maybe the most important thing is just humility, to be honest, and that goes even for automated traders too, in the sense that they understand that no matter how much money they make, no matter how good they think they are, the market at any moment can and will slap them down. So every day when they come, to their trade station, they're coming with the perspective of not, I'm the shit and, look how big my account is. It's, coming with serious humility, and that affords them an awareness and, sort of a defensive mindset that facilitates them staying alive. And that goes for guys who, we've met, in the last couple of years, we've had the opportunity to meet, a couple guys that, one of them who has made $1 billion trading. I mean, he's kind of a legend, trader within the Chicago prop industry, and a couple of guys who, are in the 100 million range, and seeing them, they just look like completely normal guys. They're wearing sandals and, a Hawaiian t-shirt. Like they do, and they carry themselves on the trading, on the trading floor the same way. It's humility. They're not swaggering. They're not strutting their shit. So yeah, because I think if you have that attitude, if you do have that swagger and cockiness, like it's just a matter of time before, you let your guard down and the market just uppercuts you,
That's a really great point, Charlie. I think that was awesome that you highlighted that. And especially hearing that, like, guys who have made $1 billion, like, that's on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
And to hear that they just sort of hold themselves like normal guys, like, it's, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So something you've stressed in the past, and I think this kind of leads on from what you were saying there, is that good traders have ownership of their strategy. Could you explain what you mean by this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they, for one, the strategy that they've chosen is one that matches who they are. If there are guys who can trade discretionarily, and they can keep, an entire universe of, market movements straight in their head. And for that guy, he shouldn't go try and learn how to code and become an automated trader. It's they have developed and gravitated towards strategies and mastered strategies that align with who they are, with their personality, with their temperaments, right? So they're not trying to force a square peg in a round hole. I think that they really understand, especially, this is one of the things we look at, if we're looking at a potential trader for the fund, they really know the various things that could derail their trade, whether it's, macroeconomic conditions, whether it's, a change in, how Q priority is determined. There's there's a litany of things that could change the potential profitability for your trade. They know all of those things. They're constantly thinking about that. It's like, you probably haven't gotten this nearly as much down in Australia, but like with, Peyton Manning winning the Super Bowl this year and Tom Brady, a bunch of controversy around him, there's been so much talk about what makes them such amazing quarterbacks, right? And they just talk about, these guys never, ever, ever stop thinking about how to win in football and how to make themselves better. And I think when we talk about ownership of a trade, it's like, that's the mentality of just constantly thinking about how can you refine it? How can you make it better? And then also knowing, more on the quantitative side, what makes your trade actually work, and the various things that you need to be concerned about, like what's your max drawdown, all the standard metrics, Sharpe, Sortino, how much capital do you need to have in the sort of 10x past your max drawdown, the black swan, and like what happens when that happens. Really thinking about it comprehensively beyond just like, hey, this thing's made I back tested it for 6 months and it made money, and let's turn it on, right? We're good to go.
Okay, so you mentioned there, the hiring process of bringing on new traders to the firm there. One of the things you look for is that they're aware of the pitfalls of their strategy, which I think's a really interesting point. What are some of the other things you look for in the traders? Like, how do you evaluate the traders or employees before bringing them on?
Yeah, so for traders, my part in any of the evaluation is definitely more on a qualitative side, right? I'm, Pete and the other guys on our team, they're much more on sort of the quantitative side, and we do, anytime someone's coming on with us, we're fortunate enough, because of the relationships we formed over the last 4 or 5 years doing this, we know someone who is pretty much absolutely killing it, who's like a 25-year veteran trading in any kind of market, right? So if someone comes to us and says, I'm a euro dollar, market maker, we know someone who's been doing that and knows that market like the back of his hand. And so we pair that trader with, that expert, and they get grilled, and then we talk to the guy and we say, what do you think about this guy? Does he understand what he's doing? I think, does the guy have a sense of humility? For me, I'm just sort of looking at him and saying, is he a humble guy? Does he bring that to the table, when he trades? Self-awareness. I think also, their personal life too. Are they volatile? Like, one of the things that can derail traders more than anything is stuff from, your personal life bleeding into your trading. Do they have a stable relationship with their wife and kids? It's kind of funny. Pete and I were talking about this today, actually. I think we're really finding our strike zone for the successful traders that we're incubating. It's guys who are like, between 30 and probably over 30, and they've had a good solid, 10 years at, established, elite firms, but now they've got, a wife and maybe a couple kids, and what they're looking for is stability and consistency. And yeah, they want to grow, they want to build, but they're really thinking long term with their trading. They're not thinking, okay, I'm trying to make $1 million in the next 6 months and then get out of here and go to Bermuda. They have a long term perspective, and their incentives are aligned with ours. And then I think there's a component to it too. It depends on the trader, but can they work with other people? Can they collaborate? Nowadays, I think the amount of specialization that has come about in trading, it's often, I think we're seeing more and more, it's a team of people building a trade. You've got a developer, you've got the trader, and there's often a couple other people involved, somewhere in that process. Can the trader communicate what needs to be communicated to a developer? Can they handle themselves? Like, can they take scrutiny? Can they handle someone asking them questions? The same question in various different ways. Kind of like, do they play well with others? And if they don't, they pretty much have to be a one-man army, and they have to be able to do everything on their own. Otherwise, there's just not that much runway for that.
Sure. Okay. Well, Charlie, I'd like to drill down a little more into the psychology side of trading. I know you're very big on this, and you've already kind of briefly touched on it earlier, but let's drill down into this a little further. I guess let's start by, I'd like to ask you, what is it about this aspect that really fascinates you, and what makes you think that it is such a big part of a trader's profitability and success?
I think that that it's just the way that psychology has always been the way that when I look at the world, that's what explains how things work for me. It just kind of makes sense. I think everyone, to a certain degree, from a natural predisposition, has some discipline that when they try to understand why things are happening the way they are, that explains it. For some people, it's physics or economics or whatever. And for me, it's just psychology. It makes sense. And a lot of it comes from experience, both watching growing up with my dad, with, watching a lot of other traders and that we knew, they were kind of close to my family and whatnot. The guys that had a grip, a handle on their psychology, on their mental health, on their consistency, tended to trade better. They tended to not blow up. They tended to not make, poor decisions, impulsive decisions for the wrong reasons. They tended to execute their strategies with more discipline. And the guys who had other issues, a lot of times it really bled into their trading. Oftentimes some of the guys who were really, really smart, really talented, it didn't matter how much knowledge they had in their brain if the filter to execute it was broken. If they had a mood disorder and they were emotionally all over the place, it doesn't really matter how smart you are or how good your understanding of the markets is. You don't have a shot at that. I kind of gravitate towards the mental health side of things sometimes, but oftentimes it's not that severe. It's just like, if you're sleep deprived, if you've slept for 2 hours a night for like the last 4 nights, like your ability to make decisions and to react quickly and to execute is diminished. And there's a lot of guys I've heard a million times from people who are like, oh no, actually I'm like, I can get by with, like 2 hours of sleep. It doesn't really affect me. And I'm like, you're full of shit. Like, it's just not, like, you're a human being. I'm sorry. At the end of the day, like, it's going to add up. It's going to affect you. And maybe the adrenaline in the moment, could get you back up to where you would be for like, a 5 or 10 minute span, but like, you're going to come down. So I think just in part from personal experience, watching it happen, over and over, with people that I knew in my personal life. And then once we started doing everything that we're doing now, witnessing it, more on the professional side, and both in the traders that we've provided education to, and then also people that we've either worked with in the hedge fund or considered working with, in moments of honesty, and when people were saying, okay, really, this is the reason why I can't trade consistently or whatnot. It's often they just turn to the psychological side of things. They're just like, I can't get my head around XYZ, or I really can't focus because of blah blah blah. So I don't have any beyond just a lot of personal experience and watching it in observation. I think it also comes down to me and my own obsession with it. I think I get kind of obsessed with like the compass effect, right? So if you have a compass, if you're standing in the middle of the woods and you have a compass and it's pointing, directly north, and you start walking that direction, you're going to end up, just walking directly north, right? If you move it 1 degree and you take 1 step, you're not going to be that far off from where you would have been, had you stayed on, true north. But if you do that for, a mile, the distance, how far off you are is from where you would have been if you would have stayed going north is pretty far, and if you sort of extrapolate, like, okay, if I had my sleep cycles down, if I did this, if I did that, if I, went through a list of things that I could do, and each one of these things maybe improved my performance, maybe improved, what I was capable of by 1 to 2%. Let's say I do 10 of those things a day. I give myself between 10 and 20% more, right? What compounding effect is that going to have over 20 to 40 year career? That's how I think about things. I don't think about it as much in terms of the day to day. It's much more like, okay, long term, like, what do I want to look back on and say, damn, I'm glad I did this because it gave me that much more, and it allowed me to achieve that much more. So I think in my own life, and really always trying to foster the resilience that is kind of required for, in an entrepreneurial setting, like, I've just learned I really have to be on my game in terms of, taking care of myself. Otherwise I'm not going to be able to make the best decisions on the fly. I'm not going to be able to have difficult conversations, with employees or partners or whatever. And you don't get to choose when those moments come up. That's the pain in the ass of it. Like, if you could just say, all right, all my difficult stuff, like the market is only going to throw shit at me on Mondays, that'd make things a lot easier, but it's just not the case. You kind of always have to be prepared. So, and then I think growing up with my dad and seeing, not only his, the fluctuations in his sort of temperament and his psychology, but also the other people in his life. I just saw firsthand, I experienced it on a really deep level, the degree to which the markets can whipsaw you around and can really come to dominate your life, and affect every area of your life, not just your professional life. If you, don't have the walls sort of built up around you, if you're not prepared if your psychology isn't really robust about it. So I just think both from an entrepreneurial side and then, looking at other traders and saying, I don't want anybody to have to kind of lose control of how they feel and what they're capable of on a day to day. And if you can build up a kind of a robust psychological, profile and kind of approach to things, then you're just giving yourself a much, much better opportunity to be in control of your life and I think to execute at a high level.
Well said. Well said. That was an awesome answer, Charlie. So I guess this might be an interesting question to bounce off your response there. What are new traders getting themselves into when they decide this is something they want to do? Like, is there anything that you find that newer traders often aren't prepared for or they often don't expect when they come into trading?
That's a really good question. Yeah, there is. I think that, let's see, I think new traders often are not prepared for the amount of self-analysis and reflection that they will have to do. The amount of sort of like, I don't know if I call it soul searching, but just understanding of themselves and confronting their own issues. I don't think a lot of guys are prepared. Not just guys, women too. I don't think they're as prepared to deal with that. I think that they're like, okay, I'm going to learn a strategy and I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to do it. But even if you're, even if you're fully automated, I mean, you're still the one, inputting the inputs and the strategy into that algorithm. Like, it's indirect instead of direct, but it's still going to affect it. So I think they're not prepared for the amount of self-knowledge that they're going to have to cultivate and constantly, develop. I think also just the difficulty of it too. There's so much stuff out there, Instagram, whatever, that's just like touting, easy money and blah, blah, blah. And it's easy to get sucked into that. And, you can kind of tell yourself like, oh man, if I can just make like an extra, I'll do this on the side, I'll make $2,000 a month, blah, blah, blah. Things will be so great, but it's like, it's just not, if it was that easy, it's just not that easy. I'm sorry. Like, there's the people on the other end of your orders. They don't care what your background is. They don't care. They want your money. They're going to take your money if they can get it. So I think that just the difficulty of the challenge and how long the road can be, a lot of guys, like I think it's pretty standard in terms of the people that we've been exposed to, unless they came into a firm structure and they were, in a much more like sort of traditional apprentice, you watch and observe for a year and then you go on and you start, trading in sim and then move up. If they're just starting out on their own, like it's probably going to be at least a year before you start consistently putting up like positive days and really starting to get a gauge for like, okay, this is the kind of strategy, this is the kind of market that I, can work with. And then, that's like step one. There's many, many, many steps beyond that. So, and then I think there's a certain component to it that I think gets lost to a certain degree. And I really do credit Pete for obsessing with this. The amount that the right platform and, digging in, talking to your broker, like understanding the makeup of the industry and understanding the incentive structures of everyone who touches your orders can be an immensely valuable thing. So understanding, if you're going through an introducing broker and then an executing broker and the clearing firm, the exchanges, and then, the other market participants, like what are they incentivized to do? I think that a lot of guys don't want to go down that path. It's just too much for them, but it can really be a valuable thing just in terms of understanding how markets move and, why certain things are happening the way they are. So I think a lot of guys aren't prepared to do that sort of analysis.
Yeah, and that was really interesting. I also picked that up from speaking with Pete on episode 9, and also Haim Bodek, who was on episode 49, obviously talked a lot about that and where your orders are going to, which was fascinating, like stuff I was completely oblivious to. So that interview was a real eye-opener.
Yeah. I've heard Haim and Pete talk about that stuff more than I ever care to do ever again.
That's funny. So, sticking with the topic of psychology here, I guess it's probably slightly changing the subject, but still very relevant, is human optimization, or biohacking, as some people may call it. I know you yourself like to experiment a little. Can you give us some insight to the things you've either tried out for yourself or researched in the effort to, optimize your performance and how you function on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, totally. I mean, some of it is the stuff that's probably a little bit sexier, like neurotropic sort of stuff. Paracetams, the whole racetam family. Anybody who has any kind of exposure to neurotropics has probably heard of that kind of stuff. That I've tried out a bunch of different types of stuff like that. Some of it, I think there was a decently discernible effect. Some of it, not as much, and the side effects, I just didn't really think were worth it. It wasn't worth dealing with. But yeah, I know a fair number of people who have some sort of supplement or neurotropic or something that they're like, this really helps me, focus on something, this type of work, right? Or it really helps me, stay calm in various situations. It doesn't always have to be like some upper, some stimulant that, gets them jacked up. So yeah, I think that is totally, especially in like the neurotropic, supplementation space. You got to be really careful because there's definitely stuff out there that is, you don't want to be toying with at all. And every human body is different, right? What works and reacts well to someone's system, might have a really horrible reaction with someone else's system. And then it's really a matter of just sort of experimentation on like low levels and finding the things that you think enhance your, performance and your experience and doing those and cutting out the ones that don't. But I think, on sort of the non, it's not as sexy, but the stuff like, I mean, for me, the biggest thing has been sleep. That it's frustrating for me, to be honest, because I wish that there was just like a pill or like something that was like cooler than just like sleep. I mean, that seems so like, Middle Ages, that sleep, it's 2016. There isn't something that is more important, but sleep for me, like just consistent sleep cycles and, getting enough of it. I'm the type of person that's like, I'm decently sensitive to it. I can go a couple nights in a row with 6 or 5 hours maybe, but after a while it's really going to add up. I think especially with the amount of stress that, that we deal with on a day to day. So getting that down, getting into a good rhythm. I know that's something that Lucci is tried to do off and on at various points in his life. Avoiding stuff like, substances that are going to mess me up the next day. Like if I don't go out and get hammered, anymore. I'm 29. So my hangovers now last like 4 days. So I'm just like, it's not really worth it. And then, nutrition, exercise, exercise, and meditation for me have been really big. Meditation, I do it 20 minutes a day, twice a day, really helps me. It's pretty much like a power nap is how I would describe it. I just, it's very relaxing. I come out of it, and for the next 3 to 4 hours, I really feel like, I'm completely rested, feel, a lot calmer, able to handle a lot more stress, a lot more stuff getting thrown at me. So, and to me, it's like, risk reward. It's free. Like I kind of ask myself, why wouldn't I do this? Nutrition for sure. Like the stuff you eat, the stuff you put in your body, like it's absolutely going to affect how you feel, how you function. I used to make Lucci eat food. I felt like his mom. When we lived together, I would make him eat breakfast because it drove me insane. He would wake up and he wouldn't eat all day. And like, so we wouldn't eat for 8 hours. Whereas for me, I eat like every 2 hours. And it just drove me insane. And, I don't even know if he does it now. He lives back in Boston, so I don't get to, observe him every day. But, I know it did help him at certain points, when we were living together and he was trading. So yeah, just like finding the things that like your body reacts positively to and doing those things, and then eliminating the things that you don't feel that great with. And some of it's stuff that I think what people get caught up with is trying to find like a generalization, trying to find some rule that applies to everybody. And it just doesn't work like that. I mean, think about how many different, blood types there are. Like, the amount of diversity within from person to person in terms of how they react to various, substances or whatever is huge. And, it could be that something that works for you or something that you're sensitive to, nobody else deals with it. Fine, who cares? Like, if it works for you, do it. So I think it required the annoying part, which it's not annoying for me. I like this stuff. I'm a nerd with it. The annoying part is I think you do have to experiment a lot. Like, you have to kind of put in the time and the effort and try out various things. And, if you think you're allergic to some kind of food, like, you got to cut it out of your diet. You got to try. Like, if you think that that your sleep cycles is really going to help to help you stay more focused and energized throughout the day, like, you got to do it. There's only one way to figure it out, and that's just to experiment with it.
For sure. No, that was really insightful, Charlie. Thank you very much. Now, I want to ask you, what technology do you think may be utilized in the future to monitor a trader's state, whether that be, any of the things you've discussed prior to this?
Yeah, actually, some of this is stuff that we're working on a little bit in the periphery here, extremely early stages, but definitely something actively thinking about. Especially for discretionary traders, I mean, the health of your nervous system is very important. If you put yourself through the ringer for, 4 days or 5 days in a row, like, your nervous system you're going to see effects of that. And, one of the things that you can do to measure that is heart rate variability, which is essentially, it's not actually your heart rate, it's the amount of variability in your heart rate. Like, so, that your heart is actually beating at, changing intervals, which it sounds counterintuitive, but that's a good thing. You want that. You don't want your heart to be, like a metronome, like boom, 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 boom. So as your heart rate variability increases, generally sort of the health of your nervous system also increases. So, you can do that there with the Apple Watch. I know you can do it. I mean, you can measure your heart rate variability, on a moment-to-moment basis. And in the future, I think that it's totally feasible that you would be able, that within a trading platform, or for a risk manager, let's say, who's overseeing a number of different traders, looking at the state of their nervous system and saying, this guy's blown out, man. He can't. He's operating at 75% of what he typically would be operating at. He shouldn't be putting on that sort of size. Let's take him off for the day. Let's have him sit. And this kind of stuff sounds like crazy, but the Golden State Warriors, like, the team that is, people are arguing, is one of the best teams of all time in the NBA. Like, this is the stuff that they're doing. They monitor their players, and they say, hey, Steph Curry, you seem like, looking at your metrics here, the analytics, seems like you're a little bit exhausted. We're gonna sit you from practice today. And old school, coaches, and I think this goes for traders too. They'd be like, you fucking kidding me? Like, get your ass out there. You're a player, you play. Like, you're a basketball player, you play. But I think that those, unfortunately, for that like old school mentality, as much respect as I have for it, and there's a very small percentage of guys who can just grit through it nonstop. It just doesn't make sense in the long run, especially when you think about your career and the longevity of it. If you can push through beating the shit out of yourself, for 10 years, you might be able to get 20 years out of it if you aren't kicking the shit out of yourself, if you're actually taking care of yourself. So stuff like that, there's weird, I get ripped on in the office. I go to these things, sensory deprivation tanks, which, like, living in New York City, it's like an onslaught of just noise and chaos and blah, blah, blah. So anybody who's listening to like Joe Rogan, they've probably heard him talk about it. It's basically this tank you float in sort of Epsom salt water. So you're just floating, you're buoyant, and there's no sound, there's no light, right? So it's like, it gives your nervous system a chance to just completely shut down and recharge, right? Again, this is the kind of thing that a lot of athletes use. I could totally see. I mean, when we have the money, I want one of those for our office. So if people are just feeling cashed or exhausted, instead of going and like taking a walk, like they get to go sit, lay in a sensory deprivation tank, like a real recharge. I think it's pretty much like an arms race, and whoever has the ability to optimize, their traders, their employees, themselves the most, they're the ones they're going to have the highest likelihood of getting the best results. So actually, I think extending even into there's a company that we've talked to a little bit that basically has a profiling engine that actually they partnered up with IBM Watson apparently to do this. And basically, it's an analysis they would run an analysis on every single component of your life. So, using linguistic analysis on all of your social media, anything you put out in the world, your emails, any chat messages, looking at your spending habits within your bank accounts and everything like that, looking at all your biometrics, your heart rate variability, all those things, and basically just building a comprehensive picture of what's going on with this guy right now. That's a little bit Brave New World-ish. It's kind of creepy, even for someone like me who's like into this stuff. But I think if there were serious results that came from that, if they could say, hey, looking at your social media, looking at the stuff you're putting out in the world, looking at your spending habits, it looks like, you're on tilt. Like we gotta scale back your trading here. If it works, if it produces results, I don't know, how can you turn it down? So, yeah, I mean, those are just kind of first couple things that come to mind. I think it'll be like an integration of all those various inputs of information into your trading platform, or into, whatever the risk manager's looking at. I mean, you're going to be able to access this kind of stuff that otherwise prior to this, you never had access to this information.
Right. Yeah, no, that was an awesome answer, Charlie, and really, really fascinating, some of those things you mentioned there. And I've always wanted to try out one of those sensory deprivation tanks. I've always wanted to have a go in one. Like, how long do you sit in one of those for? Like, what do you do while you're in there?
So you go in. I go in for like an hour. I mean, it really is amazing. The first time I was in there, for the first 5 minutes, I was kind of freaking out because I was like, I'm in a tank. It's in like a rehabilitation facility in New York. Like, they work with people who've been in car accidents or, got knee surgery or whatever. And this is a component to what they offer. And so, you're in there and you're like, I don't know the people who run this place that well. Like, what if someone came up and locked me in this thing? This would be a horrible way to die. Like that's the kind of stuff that like jumps in your head in the very beginning. But pretty quickly, you really start to get absorbed into the feeling of just weightlessness and, no sound, no light, and it's incredibly relaxing. And there's times where you just kind of float and think about various things, maybe work through some problems or, just wherever your mind drifts to, think about it. And then there's definitely times where, I pass out. I don't know if I'd call it like nap or something. You're in kind of a suspended state of consciousness, I guess. And it's like a extremely relaxing, floating experience. And you just, you're kind of out, and then, the lights slowly fade up when your time's up and you're like, oh, an hour just went by. So, it kind of depends on, I guess, the mood that you're in. There's people who take like, psychedelics, who'll take like, mushrooms or LSD or something, will get in there. I'm not at that level yet, maybe down the line, but there's definitely people who do like mind altering substances and go in there too. But yeah, I mean, it's really just like it's a chance to relax and reboot. And actually afterwards you come out, you're in a really relaxed, chilled out, headspace. So I often, I'll go on like a Saturday. I usually go home and pass out for like 2 hours and have like an awesome, sleep. So yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Very cool. I sometimes listen to Joe Rogan's podcast, and he often talks about them. He swears by them, so yeah,
he
maybe
loves
one
them.
day.
Yeah, he's pretty much credited with like completely reviving the industry for these things. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, well, I know he has one in his house actually, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, Charlie. Well, let's close this off here. Last question: where can listeners go to find out more about you?
That's a great question. Sayinglucci.com is one of the better places. I mean, if you go to the About Us section, the whole team is on there. We're in the process of really formalizing and kind of putting out the incubator, the kind of the mothership to all the various websites and things that we're operating. So I think there's going to be a lot more information for all of us on there, pretty soon. Twitter, I guess, at Charlie Bgate. I don't tweet as much as I would like to, as the rest of the guys I work with do, but I'm on there. So yeah.
All right, guys, well, make sure to go and follow Charlie on Twitter and check out sayinglucci.com. Charlie, it's been awesome having you on. We've had a really interesting conversation here. I hope listeners really enjoy it. And again, thank you very much for doing this.
Awesome, Aaron. Thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it. Really enjoyed it.
You've reached the end of this episode of Chat with Traders. But rest assured, there are more episodes loaded with real market insight and zero hype on the way soon. So to stay updated with each great new release, subscribe to the podcast in iTunes. And we'd love it if you'd leave a rating and review. We'll catch you next time on Chat with Traders.
What would your trading look like if capital wasn't the constraint? That's the reality for most traders. It's not skill holding them back, it's size. Trade the Pool changes that. Step into the U.S. equity markets with up to $200,000 in buying power without committing your own capital. Full access to stocks and ETFs, long or short, executed with the precision and freedom serious traders expect. Your performance is measured by one standard: disciplined risk management and consistent execution. Meet that standard and you operate at scale. No subscriptions, no ongoing obligations, just a clear path forward. For those ready to trade beyond limitations, this is the next level.
Markets, speculation, and risk. This is the Chat with Traders podcast, hosted by Aaron Fifield.
What's up, traders? You're listening to episode 74. I'm Aaron Fifield, and thanks for being here. My guest this week is John Walsh, aka the Black Cabbie Trader. The backstory of John: in 2012, he entered a competition, the City Index Trading Academy, which was a group of people with very little market experience to see how well they would perform over the span of 5 weeks. John came out on top and won £100,000 in prize money. He's of course continued trading ever since and has developed into quite the trend/position trader, focused on US equities and makes simplicity an absolute top priority. He's also a black cab driver in London, which you'll hear more about very shortly. In this episode, we chat about the competition, John's trading methodology, and why you've got to stay out of your own way, as John puts it. If you're enjoying the podcast and if it's helped you in any way, I have a very small favor to ask. Please leave a brief iTunes review. It's such a huge help. So if you can help, just go to chatwithtraders.com/iTunes. It'll take you all of about 2 minutes. Thank you. Okay. You're listening to the Chat with Traders podcast. Here is an interview with John Walsh. All right, John, and we are rolling. What's up, man? How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Aaron. How are you?
I am doing just fine. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It's really great to be speaking with you.
No worries. Thank you for having me on. I'm very pleased to be on. Hopefully, people get something from it. And obviously, you've had some big hitters before, so I'm honoured to be among the illustrious group.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. So, how's your day been? You keeping busy?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I trade US markets, and I'm obviously in London, so I have to wait until the evenings over here before I can do my homework and scanning charts. But as you know, I'm a black cab driver by trade, so I do a few hours in the cab during the day, keep myself busy, and so weather's increasing, getting a bit better over here. So yeah, no, things are good.
Very good, very good. All right, we'll dig into that all a lot more in just a bit. But let's start off with talking about how you first developed an interest in markets and more specifically trading. So where did everything kick off for you?
Well, it started really, Aaron, from when I was a child, like in my teenage years, really. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche. I've heard a lot of people say that they followed the stock prices in the newspaper. I did all that. I used to cut them out each day, and I used to have a pile and pile of newspaper clippings of old stock prices. But in reality, I had no idea what moved the price up or down. I didn't know about charting or anything like that. It was very basic. I used to follow tickers and was interested in the company names. And from that, it just went up. And I just started to read some books and stuff, and I just started to love it, really. But I hadn't actually started trading just yet. It was just like just a hobby in the background that I just kept an eye on.
Okay, cool. So, John, I know you went on to going into, what did you do? You went into a competition, but prior to the competition, which we'll talk about more in just a bit, what was your experience with trading before entering?
Well, Aaron, this is the thing. I literally had no trading experience at all. I mean, I did a bit of like paper trading, as you would call it. I used to look on Google Finance, and I built up a little paper portfolio of stocks. But it was just really, it wasn't even technical or fundamental. It was just I used to read about stocks, put them on a list, watch them go up, watch them go down, and I used to just follow it like that. But no actual real trading experience at all.
Okay, got it. So, well, let's talk a little bit about the competition. I mean, that's kind of how you got a bit of a name for yourself in the UK, especially. So, how did you hear about the competition? What motivated you to try out? And what even was the competition?
Well, it was called the City Index Trading Academy. I don't know if some of your listeners will be aware or not. City Index is a broker in the UK. And it's funny, a lot of people ask this, how did I get involved? I literally do not remember. I must have been looking at some kind of trading-related website, and I saw an advert, and I literally just put my name and email address in. They said they'd get back contact with you in a couple of weeks or so, and I thought, well, I'll see if they get back to me, and they did, and we had to do like a phone interview because they wanted to talk to you and make sure you could do what they required from you, and then they wanted people with no experience as well, so I fitted that category, and so I did the phone interview, and then I think they had about 500 applicants sign up online. Then they whittled that down from the phone interview down to 80, and then we had to go for a live interview, which they whittled that down from 80 down to 12, and then for the final 12, we had to do 2 days filming at the City Index offices, and out of the 12 they whittled that down to 8, and we were the final 8, and then the competition started.
Okay. So what was the whole sort of concept, the idea of the competition?
Right, so the whole concept behind the idea was literally taking 8 people off the street with little or no trading experience at all, teach us how to trade effectively, what a lot of people would say was the right way, like a combination of technical and fundamental analysis. We would talk candle charts, candle patterns, how to read like fundamental news, and how to put it all together into a trading plan. And from that, we just learned a good basic foundation and framework to trade, and we was off and running.
Okay, interesting. So what were some of the questions that they asked you? Like, what was the screening process like? You said that you went to a couple interviews. What were some of the questions that they wanted you to answer?
Oh, yeah, so we'd sat down and they literally hit us straight away. Like, on the day I went for my interview, but as soon as I sat my bum on the chair, they said to me, like, what did the FTSE close yesterday? And to be honest with you, I didn't have a clue because I really had no idea. And they asked me what sort of, I think they asked me the price of oil closed in the previous day, And also they asked me just to give them a financial story that I'd read in the paper. So, but they just basically want to make sure that you had an inkling and an interest in trading primarily, because they just wanted to make sure that people were interested in the subject matter at least. Because I've got to remember there was £100,000 prize money up as well, so it was taken very serious, and a lot of people did follow it in the UK at the time.
Okay, and what was like? I mean, it kind of sounds like you just saw this opportunity and you just sort of decided, I'll put my name in, I'll put in my email, and if I get it, I get it. And you did get it, but did you have any real desire to become a trader, like make a career out of it?
Absolutely. I mean, when the interview process was going on at the time, I was doing the knowledge to become a London black cab driver. I'm not too sure if you know what the knowledge is. It's a studying process you have to go through to become a cab driver in London. And the plan always was, because it takes up a lot of time, to study the knowledge, become a cab driver, and then because being a cab driver, I'm my own boss, I could then learn to trade afterwards. But because how things ended up transpiring with the competition with me winning it, I ended up being sort of catapulted into learning how to trade. Then I became the cab driver afterwards, and that is how the black cabbie trader came about. It all sort of come together at once.
Okay. So let's just go off on a side tangent here. What is the knowledge? Because I know the whole cab driving thing is taken very seriously in London. So what is the knowledge?
Right, so the knowledge is basically you've got to learn the centre of London is Charing Cross train station. Now you've got to learn the 6 mile radius of that, and they say it's about 20,000 streets, and you have to learn all what they call points of interest, which is essentially anything that anyone can come up to you and ask you to take them to, i.e. train stations, police stations, museums, theatres, absolutely anything you can think of, statues, and you have to do that, and it's a process, and you just do your best. You have a lot of oral exams. You literally go into a room with an examiner, and they literally ask you 4 questions, take me from A to B, and you have to do what they call it. So I have to say left into so-and-so street, right into so-and-so street, cross this roundabout, left into this street, right into that road, and you have to get them there. And then it's a long old process. I'm very proud of it, and eventually I got through it. But fortunately, I learned to trade before I finished that, so I got to hit the ground running with both.
Right, that's really full on. So you're not allowed to use any GPS?
No GPS. No, it's all done by memory, and you just look. You look at basically a flat laminated map of London, and you use like a watermarker to pen in the line, because you have to go as straight as you can. Essentially, they call it on the cotton, which is basically you put a cotton string from one end of the route to the other, and you try and call it as straight as you can. So left, right, no going up major roads and then just chucking the left. You got to use all the intricate routes you can.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it was a busy time.
So where does that fit in your life today? You still do, a few hours cab driving each day?
Well, yeah, exactly. So because I trade the US markets, as I said, in London, they don't open till the afternoon. So I get up early in the morning. I go out like 7, 8 in the morning, 2 or 3 times a week, do a few hours, come back in the afternoon, sometimes before the US market opens, sometimes it's not just yet, but I've done all the homework the night before, and then I watch the open. But I've said on Twitter, sometimes, a lot of the time, the market opens and I do nothing, because I'm a position trader. Everything's very automated in respects to moving the stops. I don't, unless I'm actually opening new trades, there's not much for me to do. So I just watch it and I love it.
So it keeps you occupied during the day. It's excellent.
Exactly, and I'm always I'm on Twitter and stock twits. I'm reading articles and I'm talking to people, and I'm answering emails and I'm reading trading books. So I'm just trying to immerse myself in it, really. Good
stuff. So let's get back to the competition. I really want to dig into this a little more.
Yeah, no worries.
Why do you think they chose you? I mean, like you said, there was a lot of entries to get into this competition. Why do you think they chose you? Is there anything that stands out?
Well, I actually did ask them this question after it was all over, and they just said that they could see I was hungry. They could see I was really, I'm a competitive person in nature, and I really was keen to win. I mean, even if there wasn't £100,000 prize money, I'd have still done my best to win, because it was over 5 weeks, 5 trading weeks, and I won 3 out of the 5 weeks. I finished second 1 week, and the week I didn't, I finished in the bottom 3. No one made any money, and they just saw something that I was really keen. I was so pleased to get to the final, sort of almost the final selection process, and they just loved my enthusiasm, and they thought I was going to be good, and it ended up being that they were quite pleased with how I performed, and it all finished with quite a bang at the end with my final trade, and it was all exciting. A lot of people followed it, so yeah, they were pleased with the result, and obviously I was too.
Right. Okay. So what were you? I guess what I want to ask is, what were you taught? Like, what was the training like, or were you just kind of sort of set free? Like, was there any process that you went through right at the beginning? Like maybe in the first week they put you through some sort of program. Was there anything like that?
Yeah, there was. That's correct. Yeah, there was. We used to go to their office every day at the beginning. We had a lot of seminars, and we were basically taught technical analysis 101, like basic candle charting. I mean, literally what the wick on a candle looked like, stuff like that. But then it went into technical analysis, all the like stochastics, moving averages, chart patterns, and like everything you could almost think. Even very advanced for a beginner, because we literally, some of us had never even opened a trade. Some of them had, but they wasn't even that experienced. But it was literally overkill, but it was done in such a way you couldn't help but not take it in. And because it was for a competition, everyone was keen to listen and not miss out. So you just sort of like became a sponge. And I still use a lot of what I learned then today.
Okay. So I think there were two sort of key mentors who were giving you some sort of guidance throughout the whole competition. Who were the two mentors?
Yeah, that's correct. That's James Chen from the States. He came over. I mean, I think he lived in London at the time during the competition. He's known in the States as a chartered technician. He's wrote a few books. And also Ashraf Laidi, who's a very well-known person in the UK and even the world. He does Bloomberg and CNBC and stuff like that. And he's wrote another person who's wrote another couple of books. But it wasn't just the webinars. We had them on 24-hour call. You know, we'd get emails and phone calls, and they were really, because during the competition there was a live P&L table, so they could see and we could see how everyone was doing, and it was really engrossing. And they were really good guys, and they gave us a lot of good advice. Also, not just about the technical part, but also the psychological part. Don't panic if you're having a bad day and stuff like that. It wasn't just about that. It was because some of us had never traded before, so we didn't know how to handle losses and if things were going not the way they should have done. So it was a lot of aspects that, I mean, to be fair, it was a real baptism of fire, actually. I'm fortunate that I got in hindsight. It was a very stressful time. I hardly slept for 5-6 weeks. But afterwards, when I look back, I was really fortunate.
Okay. And just so we're clear, whose money were you trading? I presume it was probably, who was it, City Index?
Yeah, City Index. So the thing was, we was talking at the start amongst ourselves, the traders, we were saying it was some kind of demo account. But coming to the end of the last few weeks and we started making some money, we wasn't completely convinced it was demo, because they were taking it a little bit too, I mean, I know it was a serious business. I mean, regardless if it was demo or not, the winner on the last week was going to get 100 grand. But there was some real interest, and so I'm not convinced it was demo, but it may have been. But then again, it could have easily been real money, and it was. I mean, we treated it as it was so.
Yeah. So how much money were you allocated at the beginning, and did that like sort of increase over the weeks or decrease?
Yeah, it did. So the first week we was given 5,000 each, and I mean, because it was we didn't know what we was doing essentially, and it was all very nervous, and we was dipping our toe in here and there. I don't think, honestly, we did as well collectively as they thought we was gonna. So they kept it at the second week as 5 grand, and then every week after that, it accumulated even more, and then in the final week we traded 100 grand account.
Okay.
For the finale.
Right, that's a big jump up.
Yeah, it was.
So what sort of style of trading did they promote, and what products were you trading?
Well, see, as I've spoken to you previously in previous conversation, that over in the UK we have something called spread betting, which I'm sure some of your listeners from the UK will know what that is. So it's a leveraged product, and you trade it basically £1 or whatever it is per point. So for instance, if you bought Apple, just say it was $100 and you did £1 a point, for every cent it went up, so every dollar it went up, you'd make £100. So, and you can trade anything. You can trade FX, commodities, stocks,